In brief, I've been married to my wife for 11 years and we have 2 kids aged 11 and 9. She was unfaithful for 8 months, and I found out about it during the last 3 months. I didn't approach her until I had gathered proof, including video evidence, and had a separation agreement prepared by a reliable lawyer. This happened about 9 months ago, which I suppose is what's referred to as D-Day in this context. I waited for her to return home from being with her affair partner, and she was completely unaware that I had any knowledge of the situation. The moment she noticed me sitting at the table, she became very anxious. I asked her to take a seat because we needed to have a conversation. I had already shed all my tears by now and didn't really care anymore. I had already made up my mind about divorce from the very day I first learned about her affair. My wife sat down, looking extremely worried. "Wife, you're scaring me. What's going on?" Me. "I'm not here to discuss your cheating. I know everything. I'm here to work on our separation and divorce." I placed my wedding ring on the folder containing the separation agreement and slid it in front of her. The wife started crying, begging, apologizing, and pleading. All the usual reactions. We didn't make any progress. I just rejected whatever she said. Wife. "I love you." Me. "You hurt me more than I've ever been hurt, and you sleep with other men because you love me so much." After a couple of hours, I suggest that she should stay at a hotel and we can continue our discussion the next day. I let her know that if she doesn't sign the separation agreement, I will reveal her actions to everyone today. I understand it might be seen as signed under pressure, but at that moment, I just wanted it to be over. Eventually, she agrees to sign. She leaves, and I receive messages and calls throughout the night. I respond occasionally with short answers like, "I won't read this message or talk to you until tomorrow afternoon." The following day, the seriousness of the situation seems to have sunk in for her. She pleads for another chance, suggesting marriage counseling and making promises to do whatever it takes. I inform her that I plan to file for divorce on Monday and that she has 90 days to convince me that ending the marriage is a mistake. I'm not sure why I offered that. Perhaps I was feeling vulnerable, as I had already decided to end things. Yet I gave in. On the next day, I've prepared a list of requirements for her, though I don't show it to her directly. I just inform her about the existence of the list and explain that unless she follows it, we will only communicate about the kids and the divorce will proceed without hesitation, with me revealing her actions to everyone. I also let her know that even if she complied perfectly, it didn't guarantee we wouldn't divorce. My trust in her was rock bottom, and my feelings of love were gone. The only reason I even considered working things out was for the sake of our kids. I didn't mean to express this, but once again I couldn't stick to my initial decision. The list included the following requirements. 1. She needed to create a detailed account of her actions with him, explaining how it began, what led her to justify her actions to both me and our children. If she tried to omit or gloss over anything, my efforts for reconciliation would end. 2. She had to grant me full access to her social media, phones, computer, her earnings, and bank statements. 3. She was required to provide regular updates on her whereabouts and activities. 4. She would attend individual counseling sessions 2-3 times a week until she gained insight into her own decisions. Couples counseling would come later. She agreed to these terms, compiled the list, and granted me access. Afterward, I revealed points 5, 6, and 7 in sequence, only after she completed each task. 5. She was required to meet AP's wife in person, confess everything, provide all evidence, and offer to testify in court if necessary. Initially, she resisted, claiming she couldn't bring herself to do that to him. I pointed out that she prioritized AP's feelings over her own family's well-being. I made it clear that if she didn't comply, the attempt at reconciliation was over. I was ready to inform AP's wife myself if she refused. If she didn't take responsibility, I wouldn't consider reconciling. Eventually, she reluctantly agreed and confessed everything to AP's wife. AP's wife reacted angrily, slapping, kicking, and pulling her hair. Despite the assault, my wife didn't fight back, and I didn't intervene to protect her. She ended up with cuts and bald spots. Later in the car, I revealed that AP had been involved with another woman besides my wife, and showed her the evidence gathered by the private investigator I had hired. I admit feeling a sense of shame for finding satisfaction in witnessing her anguish as she realized she was just another conquest to this guy. 5. She had to talk to our kids and explain the likely consequences for our family. 6. She needed to confess her actions to our family and friends. 7. I decided to have a 3-month affair. lying to her and engaging in secretive behavior. I would emotionally connect with another woman during this time. I wanted her to comprehend the pain and humiliation of what she had asked me to forgive. I wanted her to realize the risk of me falling in love with my AP and leaving her. After 3 months, I would truthfully disclose everything to her. Number 7 was particularly difficult for both of us. I pretended to cheat, using Tinder and showing it to her occasionally. I acted like I was secretly texting someone. I would disappear for entire nights and weekends. Although in reality, I wasn't seeing anyone. I stayed in hotels, rented cabins, and Airbnb accommodations. Most of the time I would just get drunk and cry. Wife was getting more and more anxious, and I felt awful too. I hated it. I was just pretending, but even that was hard. She seemed to handle it so effortlessly. I think the most challenging part for me is how I can't see her the same way anymore. I wanted to show her what she wanted me to forgive, but instead, I realized how terrible it is to do something like this to another person. We're in marriage counseling now, and she's making some progress, but I'm struggling more. Some days are tougher than others, I guess. I've got the divorce papers ready, though I haven't taken that step yet. I'm not entirely sure why I haven't. We're not as distant as we used to be, and at least we're not arguing. So I suppose that's progress. She's really sorry, and I know we've got a long road ahead. Who knows where we'll end up? I can't shake off how awful I felt pretending while she handled it so easily. It's hard for me to see her positively now. I see her more like a monster. Sometimes I wish I had ended things on the very first day, but now we've both come so far. Is there any way for me to change how I see her? I've forgiven the other aspects, but I'm just stuck on this one thing. Edit. I finally told her that I hadn't actually been seeing anyone after just 7 weeks. I couldn't keep up the act, it made me feel terrible. Update. My wife and I were up all night after I showed her the post yesterday. Here's an update with some thoughts and reflections. We understand our chances of success are really low, and it might take many years to get through the worst of it. But this morning we both agreed that we're committed to giving it a try. She was completely devastated by some of the things I said and many of the comments. Still, in the end, we managed to have a genuine conversation, even though we don't always succeed at that. To everyone who spoke to me with strong opinions, being in the middle of something like this is completely different from looking at it from the outside. Nothing is clear or easy. Emotions are overwhelming, and even getting up in the morning to face a new day feels almost impossible. If I were to try to explain how difficult it is to think clearly and make good choices, let me give you this analogy. Imagine you're living your life, standing on top of a mountain. You can see all around you to the horizon, with no doubts. Your mind and thoughts are clear. You know who you are, what you want, and where you want to go. Imagine suddenly being pulled from the top of the mountain, shoved into a dark sealed box, and spun around so fast that all your blood rushes to your legs. You're on the verge of passing out. Your thinking is clouded, and you're overwhelmed with nausea and dizziness. You'd do anything to stop feeling like you're about to throw up. This is the closest I can come to explaining the intense trauma my mind went through. In such a state, it's inevitable to make some poor decisions. I believe anyone would make mistakes in this kind of condition. To those who were saying we were harming our children, we disagree. We spoke to our kids, and they're actually thankful that we've been open with them and included them in our efforts. As my youngest put it, it's my family too. They have more faith in us than we do, and appreciate that we ask for their advice and thoughts. We've been careful to assure them that we won't let them be put in the middle. We've also made it clear that none of this is their responsibility or fault. They've expressed that they like being part of the process and supporting both of us. They offer kind words and extra hugs when they sense we need it. They understand that fixing things might not be possible, but they've made it clear that they'll feel let down if we don't give it a proper try. The initial months were incredibly stressful, but once things settled, they became really appreciative of being included. Unlike some of their friends whose families are falling apart, they're grateful for not being kept in the dark. So it seems our kids are in a better situation than we are. I just hope we don't disappoint them too much. To those who thought I was crazy and questioned how I could be tough on my wife while talking about reconciliation, just to clarify, on the day everything came out, I didn't plan on offering anything. My initial intention was to end it quickly. Even when she came back the next day, begging for a chance and offering anything, I still intended to end things, but in that moment, I couldn't go through with it. I couldn't walk away from her. I felt weak, ashamed, and angry. I wanted her to feel the pain I felt. But deep down, I still had feelings for her, even though I couldn't admit it or end things. After some reflection, I made the list and laid out my conditions. I never imagined she'd agree to the toughest terms. I didn't expect her to confess to the AP's wife, tell our kids, families, and friends, and I definitely didn't anticipate her standing by me during my pretend revenge affair. Honestly, I hoped she'd give up. but I also wanted her to experience some suffering. I believed her suffering would somehow make me feel better. It didn't. As she did everything I requested, I couldn't deny any longer that she was genuinely sincere, wanting to fix things, and deeply regretful for her actions. She's been putting her all into reconciling. Sadly, I haven't been doing the same. I've been looking for reasons to give up and walk away, or trying to push her into giving up and leaving. There were moments when I was terribly cruel, unleashing my anger on her. I admit, I can be intimidating. Remarkably, she's taken it all without making excuses. She doesn't try to defend herself, she just absorbs it. She told me she's never been afraid of me, but I'm not entirely convinced. She believes I'd never physically harm her, though I'm not so certain. There have been times when I've come close. I really hope I never, ever cross that line. I'm genuinely scared that I might cause serious harm or even destroy someone. For those who asked about her reasons for doing it, we've come to realize that she felt stuck and suffocated. Our life was too safe and predictable. After her best friend's death, she felt lost, and she became vulnerable to someone manipulative who knew exactly how to deceive her. Now she feels deceived and is struggling immensely to reconcile her choices with the person she believed she was. We've discovered that this was a pattern with her affair partner. He had been cheating on his wife with 2, 3 other women, even before they started dating. We also found out that he has 2 illegitimate sons. As for me, I hadn't fully committed to reconciliation. I'm a tough person, capable of both enduring and delivering. I convinced myself that I'd find solace if my wife experienced suffering. I was open to walking away if I found a compelling reason. I was mistaken. I've been seeking reasons to keep my distance from her, still carrying deep wounds. Fear of getting close and hurt again held me back. This reluctance hindered our progress toward reconciliation. She's been the sole one fully invested. Some wondered if I could give love as effectively as I could punishment, and the truth is I can't. But I'm actively working on changing that now. While I've forgiven her, I've been keeping her at arm's length, attempting to find a reason strong enough to override my love for her so I could leave. I'll shift that approach and genuinely put in effort to reconcile. If we don't succeed, at least I'll know I tried my best moving forward, even if it means risking more pain. Many condemned my wife, while others noted she's human and made mistakes. Currently, I'm responsible for handling the fallout from her poor choices, a role I didn't seek. I've spent a lot of time pondering this situation. I'm not exempt from making mistakes either. There are moments when I act irrationally and treat her extremely harshly. My urge to punish her has consumed me with hatred and anger, sometimes uncontrollably. Like her, I've lost control and made poor choices. We're both just human. I need to find ways for us to move beyond this together. I'll step down from my high horse and make an effort to contribute equally 50% to this relationship and our efforts to mend it. Regarding my wife, the day after D-Day, she realized the extent of the damage I suffered. There was no escaping it, no room for forgiveness, just emptiness. She understood that saving our family was a slim chance, but she was willing to do anything to try. It's evident now that she never truly loved AP. She was drawn to the excitement, the illusion. She expressed gratitude for my unwavering and resolute approach. It snapped her out of the affair haze, brought her back to her senses, and refocused her on what truly matters. She believed her punishment was deserved, and it prevented her from hating herself as much. She's thanked me profusely for not letting her off the hook, for pushing through. She's been harder on herself than I ever was, and she even contemplated ending her own life at one point, though she refrained because it seemed like an easy way out. I discovered that she's been harming herself since D-Day, hitting and pinching herself, her legs completely covered in shades of purple, a continuous black mark. It's not helping, though. We've agreed that her focus needs to shift towards forgiving herself. Our healing can't begin until that happens. It's a bit strange. Now that she's set on punishing herself, she's lost all those qualities that initially drew me to her. Her sense of humor, her smile, her well-thought-out opinions, her self-esteem, her loving patience, they've all faded. I find it difficult to rekindle my feelings for her when she's suppressing the very things that made me love her in the first place, the qualities that led me to be with her and marry her. All in all, we've made some progress, thanks to the kind strangers on the internet. There's still a long road ahead, but we've pinpointed some major obstacles to overcome. We actually slept in the same bed for the first time since D-Day, so that's a step. It felt nice to be next to her again. I still have love for her, And it's a bit tough to accept. But then I think about my kids and it gives me the strength to persevere. We'll strive to build something new since the old relationship is no longer here. Update. This will be my final activity on this account, as it has fulfilled its purpose. And I'm incredibly thankful for all the help I've received from everyone. There were times when it felt overwhelming, but I'm all right. Well, I should say we are all right. Ever since I committed fully to reconciling, there's been a remarkable improvement. We've even started reconnecting a bit. My wife, or rather the version of my wife I fell in love with, is starting to emerge more and more. We've been attending therapy sessions and making significant progress in our communication. We've also resumed being close regularly. While it's still early days and the odds may not be in our favor, we're making surprisingly positive strides. I'm making an effort to show my appreciation for her every day, and she's doing the same. Although there are moments of intense emotional pain for both of us, overall, we're experiencing more good times than bad. I believe we'll be all right. Our kids are doing well, and I have hope for the future. Update. I've received requests for an update. We're currently living apart. Initially, our reconciliation efforts were going well, and my wife did her part right. However, she's struggling to forgive herself and has a lot of self-hatred. On the other hand, I managed to hide my emotions for a while. The issue is that beneath the surface, my feelings were still simmering. Feelings of emasculation, betrayal, lies, humiliation, and anger were all bubbling underneath. As a result, I regressed into being mean, vindictive, and angry, and I'm no longer interested in being that kind of person. So, we decided to separate to give ourselves some space. We might attempt reconciliation again later for the kids' sake. That's where things stand. Sometimes, it's just not possible to fix things completely. I'm not very optimistic about us making it in the end. My wife, who's 35 and we've been married for 2 years, was a college professor for a while when this story happened. She worked really hard to land this job, and she had every reason to be proud. Her parents were definitely impressed. She threw a big celebration for her graduation and new job, and the whole family was in town for it. We even delayed our marriage as per her request, so she could secure her dream job. This job was her whole deal, and I couldn't picture her doing anything to mess it up for us. But I wouldn't be talking to you today if she hadn't. She got close pals with a few of her students. They were around their late 20s, so they were pretty close in age. Still, it struck me as kinda odd that she was buddies with them while also being their professor. It didn't feel very professional, but I held back from sharing my thoughts. Apparently, she joined in on some of their get-togethers, or at least, that's how she described them. More like laid-back hangouts than actual parties. She mentioned they even talked about some class topics with her because her students were super passionate and focused. I just let it go on. I really wish I had tried to talk her out of blending her dream job with enjoyment, but she was just so thrilled. She truly felt on cloud 9 and believed she was making a real impact on their lives. She always got back home at a reasonable hour because she didn't want to leave me by myself all night, and she didn't go out more than twice a month. I could sense something was off. When she stayed out until 2 a.m., I was awake, waiting, and that led to a big argument. She claimed she was only assisting her students, but that explanation wasn't cutting it for me. I insisted on getting to the bottom of things, but she stuck to her story. I asked her to take a break from hanging out with students for a bit, and that set her off. She accused me of being controlling and started crying. She said she was a responsible woman who deserved to have her own life, especially when she found someone who brought her such joy. My eyes widened. She quickly backtracked, saying she got her words mixed up because I was confronting her and she was exhausted. I was really bothered by her mix-up, but I didn't have the energy to keep arguing that night. I couldn't even bring up the idea of her taking time off from work. I didn't know how or when I could bring up the topic again. I knew I should have acted, but I decided to hold off and see what else she'd do. Things settled down for a bit. She stopped staying out late and only went to work and back home. It seemed good, although she had to grade papers at home, so I gave her space to do that. Then I caught her texting someone and it startled her. It struck me as odd, but I didn't make a fuss about it. I thought about checking her phone later, but it had a passcode. I planned to create an opportunity for her to bring students over to our place, while I'd be secretly nearby, keeping an eye out. I needed to figure out who these people were and if there was something more to it. She fell for my plan really fast. As soon as I mentioned spending an evening with my mom at the nursing home, she got excited. She called me sweet for doing it, offered to give me a ride, and said she'd pick me up later to throw me off. I agreed and headed back to the house. It took about 20 minutes. I wasn't sure what I'd discover, but I found it hard to believe my wife would do anything shady. A few times I almost convinced myself I was being paranoid and started heading back to my mom's place, but then I changed my mind and turned back. When I reached the spot, I noticed a different car parked at her house. She thought she had all the time in the world to do her thing and then swing by to pick me up. Seeing that strange car got me all fired up, and I dashed to the front door. My hands were trembling as I unlocked it and saw the most unsettling sight I'd ever witnessed. My wife was getting close with her student, not even fully dressed yet. I quickly took a picture. You know, we're in a high-tech era nowadays. I had my phone out when I saw the unfamiliar car, so I could snap a photo of whatever my wife was up to, just in case things were innocent. I might have seemed like the crazy one. But now, the reality started to hit me as she began to react after getting dressed, and her student took off. She started yelling things I couldn't even catch, while my head felt like it was about to explode. All I could hear was my own heartbeat as I thought about how our marriage was done for, and the future I had envisioned with her was a false dream. Her career was in ruins. She'd never get another chance to teach at that school. The next school would want to know why she got the boot from this one. I snapped out of my daze and demanded to know why she risked everything she had worked so damn hard to build for one of her very first students. She just stared at me with a blank expression, then spilled that he had invited her to hang out and she hadn't thought anything bad would go down. I lost it and started yelling, telling her that something seriously messed up had indeed gone down. She brought him to our place and things got intimate. She started giving me the finger and shouting back, insisting it wasn't her fault and that I'd interrupted them, so it shouldn't even count. My jaw practically hit the floor. I let her know that her logic was so absurd that I couldn't even argue with it. I packed my stuff and got a hotel room. I wasn't in the mood to argue with her anymore that night about who should leave. It was like I was dealing with a spoiled kid who thought she could get away with this because of all her past achievements. I wasn't about to stick around, and I wasn't going to let her hold on to her job either. I filed for divorce and sent the photo to the college president, just like I figured, and she got canned. She despised me and couldn't even look me in the eye whenever we crossed paths. I never saw her eyes again. She went from being this confident, flawless, high-achieving woman to someone filled with shame and disgrace. Even her parents couldn't wrap their heads around it and actually asked me to send them the picture. I did it, although I wasn't really into it. They said sorry to me. My wife wasn't working for any colleges in our state. After waiting for a few years, she moved out of state. Maybe because she couldn't find a job no matter where she tried. I've started dating again, but I'm not going to be quick to trust someone's personality or assume they'll always be honest. My day kicked off just like any other regular day. I woke up early, got myself cleaned up, gave a goodbye kiss to Emily while she was still asleep, and headed to my construction job. But little did I know, there was something unexpected waiting for me. That usual day turned into something way more extraordinary. Later in the evening, while I was at the construction site working, I felt my phone buzzing in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a message from my neighbor Mike. He said, "Dustin, your garage door is open." This struck me as odd since I distinctly remember closing it. I thanked Mike and asked if he could shut it if he didn't mind. He agreed, and I went back to my tasks. However, that open garage door kept bothering me. I wasn't sure why, but something felt off. Trusting my gut, I decided to take an early lunch break and drove back home. As I got closer to my house, my heart rate started picking up. I noticed an unfamiliar car parked in my driveway. A car I'd never seen before. In that moment, a sickening feeling washed over me. I quietly parked my truck on the street and approached my own house without making any noise. I quietly opened the side door leading to the garage, and to my surprise, it wasn't locked. The door that connected the garage to the house was unlocked too. Walking through the house without my shoes, I came across the most heartbreaking scene. My wife Emily in the arms of a stranger. They were locked in a kiss, with hardly any clothes on, right there in front of me. Rage consumed me, and everything turned hazy, making me feel like I was about to be sick. Stepping back a bit, I grabbed my phone, made sure the flash was off, and took a few photos of them kissing. I also recorded a quick video of them together in my own house. In that instant, it dawned on me that seeking revenge wouldn't bring me any real satisfaction. The best way to hit back at Emily was to make her fully realize what she was throwing away. It was time for a smart plan, one that would help me come out of this situation with my self-respect intact, despite witnessing what I did. I paused to catch my breath, then quietly left the house. my heart feeling heavy like a lead weight, but with a strategy taking shape in my mind. I decided to reach out to a friend who happened to be a lawyer. I spilled the whole story to him and asked for his advice, considering we were in North Carolina. I needed some proof to possibly lower the alimony I might have to pay. Armed with the evidence, I showed it to my lawyer buddy, even though he wasn't a divorce attorney. He pointed me in the right direction and helped me understand the necessary steps to safeguard myself. He gave me the contact info for a respected divorce lawyer who could help me out. He said she was really good. When I met with the divorce lawyer, I didn't beat around the bush. I spilled all the details. She explained that North Carolina was a no-fault state, but cheating could affect alimony payments for the spouse getting support. We got the divorce paperwork sorted and talked about our plan moving forward. Emily had no clue what was going down. Few days later, my lawyer and I set up a meeting with Emily at a local cafe. She looked surprised to see me there, her eyes wide with confusion, and asked, "Dustin, what's happening?" I pushed the divorce papers across the table, and her expression went from puzzled to shocked. She stammered, "Dustin, I don't get it." I looked at her, my heart aching, and said, "Emily, I think you do. I saw you with him." Her face turned pale, and I could tell she was getting it. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she said sorry, even though she was hurting. I knew I was making the right call. Over time, Emily refused to sign the divorce papers. By then, I'd already moved out of our place and found a small apartment for myself. Since the house belonged to Emily's parents, I wasn't worried about that. The day after she got the divorce papers, her parents stepped in and offered her financial help to hire her own lawyer. However, her parents didn't have a clue about why I was divorcing their daughter, and I figured Emily wouldn't spill the beans either. That's why I made up my mind to share the photos and video I took when I caught her with that guy in our house. I sent a package to her folks, explaining why I was divorcing their daughter. After around 6 weeks, when the divorce hearing rolled around, her parents didn't show up. My lawyer told me she was going to try asking for alimony. She mentioned it probably wouldn't work, but she wanted to keep me in the loop. After hearing what my wife's lawyer said on her behalf, they alleged I wasn't a good provider and had been offensive in court. My wife just kept spinning lies. At one point, the judge cautioned her about telling the truth in court, warning that lying could get her into trouble, which is exactly what she was doing. Luckily, we presented the evidence to the judge, and he granted me the divorce without giving her any alimony. The judge gave me precisely 30 days to gather the rest of my stuff from the house. I only had a couple of boxes left to pick up. Around 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I sorted out plans to get my things. As I pulled into the driveway, I spotted the same car that Guy drove parked there. Seeing his car initially stung, but that feeling faded fast. This time, the garage door was intentionally left open for me to collect my stuff. Emily had messaged me, suggesting that we meet up sometime, and I received that message one day. I agreed, wondering what she wanted to talk about. We had our initial meetup at the same restaurant where I had handed her the divorce papers earlier. She didn't seem like the confident and content woman she used to be. Instead, she looked like a pale shadow of her former self. She started talking, sharing how tough life had become for her. She expressed remorse for her choices and admitted missing me a lot. Despite this, her words didn't affect me much. I felt distant and uninterested in her explanations. I stayed quiet during her whole speech. When she finished, I turned to her and said, "Emily, I hope things work out for you, but that part of my life is history now." Even after I made it clear that my decision was final, she kept trying to change my mind. She told me she was done with the other person and wanted us to reunite. As I walked away from the coffee shop, I had a realization. I had come out on top, not because Emily was sorry or upset, but because I had found a sense of contentment within myself. My life had turned around, and I had discovered my inner strength and moved forward with my life. I started my life anew, slowly piecing it back together step by step. The most satisfying revenge wasn't about getting physical or causing public humiliation. It was about moving forward with more strength and wisdom than I had before. After around 7 months, Emily's father passed away due to cancer. He never showed any remorse for his initial anger when he found out about our divorce. On the other hand, her mother did apologize and invited me to the funeral. I was considering skipping it, but I didn't hold any grudges against her mother. I'm not the type to hold on to ill feelings towards others. The past can't be altered. As time went on, rumors started circulating that Emily was sinking even deeper into legal trouble as things kept spiraling. She got arrested for drunk driving on a weekend, and her current partner was involved in shady dealings, including trafficking pills from her mom's place. How did I find all this out? Her mother still reaches out to me occasionally. Our marriage only lasted 8 years before ending. This means she might have been entitled to spousal support for about half of that time. However, she went through with it anyway, and that had an impact on the outcome that was reached. It wouldn't be simple to just throw away 4 years of marriage, but I couldn't tolerate her cheating, especially after we'd put so much effort into fixing things after the first time. She had promised that it wouldn't happen again. This hurt a lot. Her first affair had disrupted our plans to start a family. We spent months rebuilding trust. Strangely enough, Amy had come to me and confessed about the affair. I had no suspicions and would never have known otherwise. Her confession helped us work through it, even though it was incredibly painful. I remember that moment clearly. We were driving back from her mom's house. Amy had been unusually quiet during dinner, but her mom's chattiness masked any hint that something was wrong. "Do you know that I love you, right?" "Yeah, I do." "Are you feeling insecure?" "No, I have something bad to confess." I could see she was struggling. "I had an affair. It's over now. It didn't last long. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wish I could undo it." My immediate reaction was, who was it with? Why did it happen? Where did it happen? I'm glad I asked because in that vulnerable moment, she opened up and shared a flood of information. It turned out her friend Jesse's fiancé had been hitting on her. She agreed to meet him for a drink, claiming she wanted evidence to show Jesse, or at least that's what she said and partly believed. She told me she tried to discourage him and convinced him that he should want only Jesse. A couple of weeks later, when I was away on a business trip, she went to a party at Jesse's place, had a bit to drink, and they ended up having a quick sexual encounter in Jesse's bed. She saw him 2 more times, both at their place, before guilt overwhelmed her. She insisted she ended it. 2 months later, we attended their wedding. A month after that, they moved to Chicago. I can understand how it happened. An attractive guy showing interest, a guy you know is attracted to you, your husband busy with work and travel, a bit of alcohol, and things escalate. I struggled with the fact that it happened multiple times. It was even harder to accept that he was Jesse's fiancé. It might be a common occurrence for people to betray their best friends, but to me, that just showed a significant lack of character. How could she stand by as a bridesmaid celebrating her friend's wedding, all while secretly having an affair with the groom? Things went downhill between us in the following days. I didn't want to be at home, and I couldn't even bring myself to touch her. Whenever I tried, thoughts of how we had been intimate while she was involved with her friend's future husband would flood my mind. The fact that she had kept this a secret from me made me feel foolish and gullible. I cringed at the memory of congratulating him at the wedding and giving him advice on marriage, not knowing the truth. After about 2 weeks of hardly speaking, Amy asked if we could attend counseling together. She expressed her fear that I might leave her, that she had messed up irreparably, and that she had hurt me beyond forgiveness. The counseling sessions were tough, but after several months, I managed to distance myself enough from the mess that our relationship began to mend. A lot came to light during those sessions. Amy had been anxious about our marriage because of my frequent travel. I had been too passive in the relationship, avoiding discussions about our issues, and my silence had contributed to her feelings of inadequacy. It's interesting how something another person does can end up feeling like your own fault. I saw the counseling process as a way of distributing blame until it was evenly shared between us. For a while, the balance swung back and forth as we worked through our anger and denial. Eventually, we found a happy middle ground and started becoming happy again. The aspect of therapy that really stuck with me was the commitments we made to honesty, trust, earning trust, fidelity, and communication. I genuinely put in effort. I rearranged my travel plans so we could spend more time together later in the week. We even started working out as a team to make the most of our extra time. When I had long work hours, we'd make sure to have dinner together. But now, all of that was shattered. I stumbled upon her affair completely by accident. It was 3 a.m., and I needed to send a file, but my email wasn't working. Amy was asleep, so I thought of copying the file to her laptop, connecting to her work network, and sending the file through her work email. And that's exactly what I did. I happened to glance at the preview pane of her email while moving the mouse. There it was. "You are so unbelievably sexy." The sender was someone from her workplace, so my initial guess, despite my racing heart, was that it might be harmless flirting or a playful exchange. The rest of the email was brief, but it hinted at a deeper connection. I told myself, all right, let's not jump to conclusions. Maybe it's just friendship, possibly. I looked up the guy's name in her email. Oh no. There were numerous saved emails from him, and she had sent him a bunch too. I randomly chose one from him. Yesterday was the absolute most amazing time of my life. You are a goddess. That was a bad sign. Then I picked another, this time from her. It was about setting up a date and mentioned, Jack will be out of town. I have to be home by 10 for his call. And there was another from him. You are a bad girl, and I love it. This was infuriating. My anger started to boil over. The thought of, I should confront her right now, crossed my mind. I sat at the keyboard, debating whether I should read all the emails. I need some time to figure this out. My initial idea was to forward all his emails to my own account, but that might leave traces. Instead, I painstakingly copied each email onto my USB drive. I attempted to sleep, but the thought of sharing a bed with Amy was unsettling. Trying to rest on the couch felt even worse, as if my own wife, who had been unfaithful, was pushing me out of our own bed. Eventually, I found myself slouched at the kitchen table, skimming through magazines until dawn broke. After that, I jumped into the shower, woke up Amy, and told her I had a problem with a work document that required my immediate attention at the office. Then I left. Sitting at my desk long before anyone else arrived, I printed out all the emails exchanged between my wife and this guy Rob. These messages detailed a physical affair in the form of a lengthy exchange. It was clear that the affair had started 3 months prior, it was still ongoing, and my wife had no intention of ending it. This wasn't some casual fling. They were regularly and consistently involved. The shocking part was that Rob had taken pictures. He sent Amy images of them together, often unflattering ones, including some taken in front of a mirror that showed their faces. I found it difficult to even look at those pictures. They deeply unsettled me and stirred up strong emotions. Another surprising aspect was that Rob and Amy were both attending the same conference the following week, from Monday to Friday, in Phoenix. They talked openly about spending a whole night together. However, they needed to be cautious about the timing because Amy had to make sure she didn't miss her scheduled calls with me. Those calls were part of the promise we made to stay faithful, open, and honest. It seemed that commitment might just be a meaningless formality to some people. I made the choice not to confront Amy right away. I wanted the week while she was away to figure out my own feelings and desires. The last time this happened, even though she had sworn it was the last time, she had blindsided me. I couldn't predict where a confrontation now would lead, but I knew from experience that it would be tough to keep a clear head for a while after. I glanced at my computer calendar. It was Wednesday. All right, I've gone through anger. I've gone through denial. Time to make a decision. What the hell do you want? The answer surged up from the depths of my mind. Revenge. I wanted revenge. She had deceived me. She had promised fidelity and then betrayed me. I had put my trust in her. I had dedicated 2 more years of my life to her solely because I believed the things she had said during our counseling sessions. 2 years I could never recover, considering divorce wouldn't necessarily solve anything. I had this suspicion that she might be sticking around due to guilt or some strange sense of loyalty. Maybe she felt trapped because of some commitment she made to stay with me. If we did get divorced, she'd likely get half of not much. She'd still be a lawyer, still attractive enough to attract another man. What I really wanted was to shatter her, to crush her dreams and aspirations. At one point, I even considered hiring someone to harm her. Violent options crossed my mind, but each led me to realize that I'd become a monster and could end up serving a life sentence in prison. So, I looked for another way. I kept up my act during our nightly check-in calls. I was getting good at pretending to be content. I'll play my part well. I'll set her up and then bring her down. Now, I just had to figure out the right plan, something truly ingenious. They say the devil is in the details, just like God. So I needed to come up with a plan that wouldn't give me away and that I could execute successfully. I realized I had to work with what I knew. My expertise was in computers. The temptation was to do something completely out of my field to throw suspicion off me. But I decided to stick with what I was skilled in. Using a convoluted and hard-to-trace method, I created an online account that tapped into servers located in another country. I also set up a basic website. It took a couple of weeks to get everything in place. During this time, I practiced acting and honed my skills. I let out a sigh. Hey, while you were away, I had some time to reflect on us. Amy was lying next to me in bed. She murmured, I've been thinking maybe we should think about having a baby. Amy's interest was piqued. Not right this moment, but maybe we could start trying in a few months. Her hand gently touched my chest. She lifted her head to meet my gaze. That's a wonderful idea. I've wanted to bring up the idea of having a baby, but I was concerned that we weren't quite ready. I put on a loving smile. I'm feeling ready now. You've been everything I could have asked for. My hand moved up and down her arm, holding her elbow. You've been so open and loving, and I truly believe you're fully committed to us. Amy's head dipped, seemingly embarrassed by the praise. I continued. I think we should discuss this more, see how it feels, make sure it's the right step. Maybe in a month or two. Amy leaned in and kissed me. As I said, acting can be enjoyable. We talked about having a baby. I wanted her to make an informed choice, which meant understanding how it could affect her career, our relationship, and our ability to take vacations. Update. After finishing my website, I faced a crucial decision, whether to proceed with my plan or not. I opted to check Amy's email again, aiming to find out if she and Rob were still involved or if things had cooled down due to the discussions about having a baby. I waited until Amy was asleep. I woke up her laptop, logged into her work network, and accessed her inbox. There was nothing unusual and no emails from Rob. I ran a search, and there it was, my wife's own words. Baby, you know I'm probably going to get pregnant soon. Get the baby now? After I go off the pill, we'll have to cool it when I'm ovulating. Don't worry, baby, I.e. be using a basal thermometer to tell me when the little egg drops, so we won't suffer too much. Rob responded, We can test protection. Operation Revenge was set in motion. Amy and I enjoyed a romantic dinner at her favorite restaurant on a Friday night. While waiting for coffee, I held her hand and said, I think we should go for it. I gave her a meaningful nod. Amy's face lit up. She took a deep breath and reached for my hand. I really want a baby. Thank you. I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. We agreed that she'd stop taking the pill when her next cycle came around. She could become fertile within a month. Little did she know that on Monday morning, she'd encounter some unsavory individuals or hackers trying to appear threatening. My website had a front page featuring Amy, though her face was intentionally blurred. Real wife having fun, real playing. I tried various typos, and that one felt suitable. It was a headline I could use. Real wife having a good time with a man who isn't her own husband. Cheating wife must pay. That was my favorite line. It's quite over the top, isn't it? My primary concern was getting the message to Amy. I spoofed an email address from a business contact. To ensure it caught Amy's attention, I used the subject line, I know about you and Rob. I sent the email through an anonymous server, worried that the FBI might trace it back to me. By Saturday, I was anticipating the weekend's conclusion. I was relieved not to be at home. The waiting time allowed me to prepare for what I hoped would be a convincing act. My plan was that if she reacted with tears, pleading for forgiveness, well, I decided not to consider other possibilities. Her car was in the garage. The lights were on. Let's find out which Amy is here. Hey, honey, I called out. No response. Amy was in the kitchen with an open bottle of wine next to her. I noticed it was already half empty. Bingo. Starting early? I inquired. Amy shook her head. I had a really rough day. I stepped into the caring partner role, showing understanding for her tough situation. I gave her a gentle hug and suggested a relaxing neck rub to ease her tension. I worked on her tight shoulders, trying to bring comfort during her hard time. Even though she tried to pull away, I was determined to keep her close. I encouraged her to consider the idea, hoping the massage could take her mind off things. The thought of our future together crossed my mind, and she seemed surprised, like she suddenly realized something. It looked like she wasn't fully aware of what was happening. I asked if she was hungry in a casual way. I munched on a cheese sandwich and wondered if my actions were helping. Maybe her tough day at work played a part. To check, I needed to move forward with my plan. I got into bed next to my spouse, who was betraying me, getting ready for what's next. The email I received on Tuesday contained specific instructions, including both my email address and her parents' contact information. I opted not to grow overly confident, allowing Amy to believe she might face only minor repercussions. My intention was to draw out her distress, prolonging her discomfort. This, after all, encapsulates the essence of seeking retribution, maximizing emotional anguish. Her heart raced as she opened the email. Should I tell Jack? Should I pay? Paying might just lead to more demands, but not paying. What should I do? I repeatedly checked the website throughout the day and discovered that at 3:10 in the afternoon, she had paid the $500 to have her photos removed. I imagined she had been wrestling with these thoughts all day, struggling to decide. Unbelievable. Simply unbelievable, I thought. This plan is actually working. One of the most satisfying parts of putting a plan into action is witnessing what you had envisioned becoming a reality. While revenge is the ultimate aim, the process of planning and execution takes on a life of its own. Tuesday night wasn't a repeat of Monday. When Amy returned home, I wanted to gauge her mood. I greeted her at the door and, as a response, received a warm hug and a lingering kiss. Her happiness was evident, though somewhat forced. After all, she had paid the money but didn't know if the outlaws would hold up their end of the deal. Amy is truly an engaging companion. She's smart, we have great conversations, and she holds intriguing viewpoints. We cook dinner together, flirting, sharing food, acting like lovers. She thanked me for lifting her spirits, and it seemed genuine. Ah, this is the life. Later, we lay in bed discussing the possibility of getting pregnant. Her birth control cycle was ending in a few days, which meant waiting 2 to 3 weeks for her fertile window. I can't wait, Amy exclaimed. I love you with all my heart, she told me. Considering Amy's betrayal in the situation, the fact that we'd been through this before and were contemplating having a baby, made me reflect. Did I truly need revenge? This was on my mind during my daily run. Feelings of anger and pain. Should I rise above and forgive after making her experience suffering? Would it be more manly to divorce her and walk away? The answer surprised me as it emerged from the depths of my soul. I wanted to cause her pain. I wanted to shame her. I had no interest in transforming her into a genuinely faithful wife and mother. My desire was to disrupt her life in a way that would haunt her until her final day. And I wanted her to never suspect it was me, so she would always believe that I had been the innocent victim, that she had lost me and the family we had planned. So what am I? I questioned myself. I'm a man. I shook myself vigorously. I'm a man, I repeated out loud. I crave revenge. I want to harm someone. I want to get into a fight and leave someone suffering in agony. I slammed the car door shut and started the engine. Amy was about to face consequences. Wednesday, Thursday, nothing. I arranged it for Friday, a dreadful email. We would have the entire weekend to witness the chaos unfold. $10,000. She could stash away $500, but having to deal with $10,000 all at once was overwhelming. The deadline was set for Monday, noon her time, or else. My intention was to push Amy to confess. I wanted to hear her say, "Oh, Jack, I'm an ungrateful person who doesn't deserve you. I've lied and cheated. I'm worthless." That's the truth, though I wasn't expecting quite that conversation. A brave man faces death once, while a coward experiences fear countless times. At 11 in the morning, Amy's office number appeared on my caller ID. Despite the urge to let it go to voicemail, I answered, "Hey babe, what's going on?" "I need to meet you urgently." Her tone was serious. Instantly concerned, I asked, "Are you all right? Is everything okay?" "Please," she hesitated, and I thought I detected a sob. "Please come home as soon as possible." Instead of rushing back home, I drove around for an extra 10 minutes, blasting loud music. Amy was waiting at the door when I arrived. She looked distressed. Worried, I inquired, "What's the matter?" I tried to put my arms around her, but she held me back. Tears were streaming down her face, and her hands were trembling. I managed to stay composed. My wife, the woman I love, was on the verge of admitting her infidelity, her involvement in taking explicit photos with another man, and the fact that she was facing an extortion situation. Despite my seething anger, I managed to maintain a calm exterior. Although I could picture myself gripping her neck and shouting, Give me back those 2 years. Give me back my life, you cheating witch. I resisted that urge. Instead, I took hold of her trembling hands and offered reassurance, saying, "Whatever it is, you know I love you." My words seemed to catch her off guard. Then she abruptly turned and headed towards the bedroom. I went to the kitchen, refilled a glass of water, and brought it to the bedroom. There, I found Amy, lying face down on the bed, her body shaking with sobs. I sat down beside her, placed my hand gently on her back, and extended the glass of water to her. She declined with a shake of her head. My plan was to remain strong and silent, allowing her to lead the conversation. I raised my hand in a gesture to acknowledge her feelings. "I'm a terrible person," she began, placing her hand on my arm. I continued to maintain my silence, shaking my head to signal that I disagreed with her self-assessment and that she was still a wonderful person in my eyes. It was clear that she needed some guidance in the conversation. "Why do you believe that?" I probed gently. She hesitated before responding. "There are pictures of me, with someone else, not you." "Pictures, you mean?" I prompted further. Amy nodded. "You never mentioned there were pictures." She lowered her head in shame. "Are these recent pictures?" I played my role as a skilled actor, expressing disbelief by shaking my head. "Amy, who was it?" "Who?" I questioned, maintaining my facade. She cried even more intensely. I let go of my facade of concern and observed her without emotion. "You reap what you sow." I left the room. Seated at the kitchen table, I sipped a single malt scotch when Amy entered. She cautiously took a seat across from me. "You'll never forgive me?" she uttered. I scoffed. "After your promises?" "Do you want me to leave?" she inquired. I was on the brink of exploding. "No, I want you to explain to me why. I want to know why you lied to me. I want you to tell me what I did to deserve this. You didn't do anything wrong. I feel so ashamed." She buried her face in her hands and tears flowed again. She only revealed his name when I specifically asked for it. "He's married." In those moments, I gained a clear perspective on Amy, and the realization washed over me that I understood her reasons for the affair, even better than she did. She was an actress, and she had a need to act. Juggling an affair while upholding a seemingly happy marriage was, to her, a tantalizing acting challenge. She was attempting to play dual roles, the devoted wife and the secret lover, the exceptional mistress and the outstanding spouse. In her vision, she would eventually transition to being the perfect mother while maintaining a role on the side. She continued to put on an act, desperately hoping that her performance could win her an Oscar-worthy result and ultimately keep me by her side. Did she never contemplate the potential consequences of her failure? She kept speaking, shifting to praise me and expressing regret for the pain she had caused. I could clearly envision the entire situation. She had genuine feelings for me. Like the tale of Adam and Eve, she had succumbed to a state of wrongdoing. Eve consumed the forbidden fruit, and the knowledge within it consumed Eve. I had no uncertainty that Amy had gradually fallen into the affair, starting from friendship and playful interactions, fueled by his need to escape grief and her unspoken concerns about my commitment to starting a family together. Then progressing to communication, and then further steps, until it led to more. Until Amy found herself portraying a role, playing a part, all the while oblivious to the fact that the role had consumed her. Final update. As I looked at Amy's vulnerability, I felt a deep connection with her. Not as spouses or lovers, but as individuals caught in an unending cycle where we possess knowledge but lack the wisdom to navigate it, where we have desires and the determination to resist, yet lack the strength to triumph. Amy had done her best to cover up the wrongdoing. "Why are you telling me this now?" I inquired. "The pictures, She couldn't continue. I realized she had mentioned the pictures initially, but hadn't elaborated on them. "What exactly are these pictures?" "Pictures of me doing it." I was visibly furious. Images of my partner engaged in that act would enrage any man. "Were you out of your mind?" I snapped. "What on earth were you thinking?" This was the horrifying reality beyond her hopeful facade. She disclosed that it was his suggestion. The pictures excited him. I had already gathered as much from their emails. My focus was elsewhere. "Is he coercing you? Is that what's happening here?" I became indignant. She might be in the wrong, but she was still my wife. Is he using those pictures to threaten you? Amy shook her head. She had no choice but to confess. I'm being extorted. I got an email. It threatened me. It told me to visit a website. So, I did. It had pictures of me, but my face wasn't clear. They were pictures of me, they demanded payment or else they'd expose me. They claimed to have addresses from my contact list. His face appears in those pictures. His wife will see them, everyone we work with. She gazed at me. He nearly had a heart attack when I confronted him. He kept saying his wife would divorce him, that he'd lose everything. I snorted. Wait, you mean they were digital? I was astounded. Amy nodded in confirmation. You foolish... I trailed off. Don't you realize, obviously you don't realize, I added with emphasis, that digital files can be traced? Your emails are stored on your servers. Skilled hackers who breach your network can search for image files. Silence. I waited, mulling over the issue. If it wasn't your boyfriend, I said the last word with disdain. Anyone might have gotten hold of a password or cracked it. Maybe someone left their laptop unattended, or perhaps someone wrote down the password and lost the note. If it was a hacker, they might have searched for image files and then honed in on your account. They didn't threaten him, right? No. Who knows? He sent the pictures to you, right? So those pictures were also in his emails and they might have breached his account too. What should I do? Amy's question sounded half-assed and half-pleading. You haven't told me the whole story yet. They demanded $500 and said if I paid, they'd remove my pictures from their website. $500? You've got to be kidding me. What's the name of this website? I expressed frustration. Let me take a look. Maybe I can figure out what's going on. She shared the site's name with me. I went to my computer and entered that name. I also searched for it on Google. No results came up. No website with that name exists, I called out to her. Did they provide a URL or a link to click on? I inquired. A link. Probably some made-up name. Can you access the email they sent? Amy retrieved her laptop from her bag, placed it on her desk, and logged into her work email account. Send that email to me. Actually, wait. If I forward it, the link might just turn into text. Let me take a look. I leaned over her desk, opened a new email, addressed it to myself, and then copied the threatening email along with its link into the new email. After sending it, I returned to my desk. The email popped up a minute later. I opened it and clicked the link, with Amy standing behind me. As the words "cheating wives" appeared on the screen, I glanced back at Amy, and she instinctively moved back a bit. I put on a show of reading the text. Who the heck are these jerks? Have you paid them yet? I paid them $500, Amy replied. How? I charged it to my Visa. They had a credit card link. I thoroughly explored the website. I don't see your picture here. They said they'd remove it if I paid. I looked at her, urging her to confess. Come on, tell me why you're revealing this now. Don't make me drag it out of you. Earlier today, Amy turned away. They sent me another threat. If I don't pay them $10,000 by Monday, they'll share the pictures with everyone. Oh my God, is that true? Amy nodded. She suddenly broke down. I've messed up everything. I can't believe this is happening. She slumped onto the floor. This isn't how I wanted my life to turn out. You know what I'm going to do? I spoke in a gentle tone. No. I'm going to divorce you. That's my plan. Amy sobbed. What's your response? You get what you give, honey. Every good thing has its end. Will you pay? I inquired. I'm lost. I've lost you, she said, raising her head. What should I do? They demanded how much? $10,000? They won't stop, I noted. I'm aware, she replied. I wouldn't mind if I hadn't lost you. Friday afternoon faded into evening. I dozed off. When I woke up, Amy was in the den staring at her computer. I can't make the payment, Amy confessed. I just can't. I grunted. I saw that coming. $10,000 is a hefty sum to part with without certainty. Maybe they're bluffing, she mused. If I tell everyone about the pictures, it's almost like they've already been shared. Amy, I can't believe you did this. We were thinking of starting a family. I don't know if I'll ever be able to move past this. On Monday morning, the final step of Operation Revenge was set up. An email containing all the pictures and some of the most explicit conversations. I didn't waste any time. I sent it to everyone on her contact list, including family, friends, and colleagues. I didn't wait until noon either. I gathered my belongings and loaded them into my car. Some might expect me to stick around to relish the aftermath, but witnessing Amy's struggles would only bring me sadness. The facade of the outside world as an illusion could no longer be maintained. It was time for me to leave. Amy's life unraveled. She had to leave her job and suffered professional and social humiliation. People mocked her, some turned their backs, but many were empathetic. Love is intricate. I loved Amy and she loved me, but her lack of self-control made our marriage untenable. Divorce proceedings were underway. I also worried about her attempting to get pregnant to tie me down. The divorce was finalized. Our possessions were easily divided. We sold the condo and split the proceeds. Amy echoed her previous sentiment, having you is all that matters. However, having me was no longer an option. Truthfully, we stayed in touch. Her lover faced even worse consequences. His wife couldn't forgive his public humiliation and took him for all he was worth. I felt no sympathy for him. Amy and I started drifting apart when I met the woman I eventually married. Balancing a relationship with my new partner while still being connected to Amy was challenging. Amy reached out with a note when she remarried. She expressed that she still had feelings for me. It's been years since we spoke, and honestly, I don't really care about her life anymore. Currently, Pilar and I have 2 kids, aged 3 and 5, and we're actively working on adding a third to the family. Pilar is fully aware of my past, including all the details about what transpired with Amy. We've had open discussions about it. Pilar knows I'd react strongly if she were to ever cheat, and similarly, I know she'd react even more intensely if I were to betray her. The point I'm trying to make is that seeking revenge should be kept in perspective. It's essential not to let the desire for revenge consume you entirely. Getting back at Amy actually helped me grow stronger and, I believe, become a better person. I faced the depths of pain and emerged into the light. I've experienced intense anger simmering within me. Now, when I hold my precious daughters, I'm fully aware of the profound and all-encompassing beauty of unconditional love.